to win. I am down and willing, so I will find a way. It took a minute, now it didn't happen right away. When it get hot in the kitchen, you decide to stay. That's how it winners made. Stick a fork in the hater on my dinner plate. I walk into the fire like it's just a bit of flame. I switch my style up, watch the money pile up. I'ma get rich with life.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Clydesdale Media Podcast, where we are highlighting the athletes of the 2024 Legends Masters CrossFit Games. And I have with me now two-time CrossFit Games athlete, Mark Peters. What's going on, Mark?
Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm good. So you went to your first CrossFit Games last year.
Correct.
Both last year and this year in the 65 plus division.
Correct.
If I saw a picture of you, there's no way I would believe you. I'd need ID to make sure you're 65 plus.
Well, thank you. I guess the health benefits of doing CrossFit, or at least staying active. So
Yeah, for sure. You should be the poster child for the CrossFit community and what it can do for you. Let's start way back. What kind of athletic background did you have that made you want to do stay competitive throughout your life?
All right. So I kind of growing up, so say pre-high school, I played Little League Baseball. I played soccer. I played football for a little while, just kind of all around whatever sport was there I liked to do. When I got to high school, I didn't actually end up doing a lot of sports in high school. It was just sort of a immaturity thing. I sort of was in other directions, whatever. College, kind of the same thing, in intramurals and all that, but not really focused on anything. And then kind of ironically, as an adult, I suppose I refocused. I picked up, at first, just as I was working out of college, there were teams out of our office playing, softball or whatever, and I got involved in that. And then I got pretty seriously involved in volleyball. I actually ended up playing some USAVB, qualifying for nationals, things like that. Then the net kind of got higher and higher as I got older and older. And so I switched to rowing initially to kind of do training for volleyball was my thought. But then I discovered that I was sort of done with what I could do in volleyball, and then went on to become a rower. Had a pretty good amount of success as a rower. And
before you go on with that,
sure.
I've heard a lot of people talk about rowing. And we've had people at gyms I've been at that are really into rowing. And it's like its own separate community of people that are really into the ergs and like what you can do on those and compete on those. Can you dive into that a little bit for me?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is on water rowing is incredibly addictive. There's something, when you develop a certain level of competence, there's something to you're out on typically a pretty body of water, the rhythm of the boat, the sort of challenge of it all. It's very, very fun and very addicting. I always kind of viewed the erg as a necessary tool to get me in shape to row on the water. But then over time, I found out I was pretty good at it. So I actually did compete. For instance, there's a world championship called Crash B. And I did compete at that at one point. And you're right. You're absolutely right. There's a whole world of, I don't know if it's just Concept 2 has done a good job of organizing it or what, but there's a whole world of sort of erg competitions and challenges and all that. And there are people who that seems to be, kind of their main focus year round is entering those things. So I've done a little bit of that, but there are some hardcores that do that an awful lot more intensely than I do.
Corey Leonard says, no way this dude is 65. Good Lord.
Well, thank you, Corey.
So
66 actually, by the way.
Yeah. So yeah, rub it in, Mark. So you row on the water. So when I first moved to Columbus, I lived right on the river, and the Ohio State crew team would practice in the river right beside where I lived. And just watching it is so peaceful.
So I agree completely. It's sometimes I'll do that kind of if I'm, at night, I'm kind of not quite sleepy or whatever, and I'll watch. It's beautiful to watch. It's a very sort of rhythmic, picturesque kind of sport. And the thing I would say to everybody, I remember I had actually a colleague when I was still working, who was watching it on the Olympics, and she said, "I know you tell me how hard it is, but it just looks like if those guys would try a little bit harder." And true elite rowers do look like they look very, very controlled, not one extra sort of muscle fires or whatever, but they're generating just incredible power. And the amount of training it takes to sort of get to that level is mind boggling. But if you watch Olympic rowing, it looks almost relaxed. So, and Ohio State, by the way, has very good rowing. So you're watching a pretty high standard there.
Well, it's the sculls, right? That they call that, where it just tips the water and like it makes such a small mark in the water.
Yeah. So to be really, really technical, there's sweep rowing and then there's sculling. Sweep rowing is where each rower has one oar. Sculling is where each rower has two.
Okay.
So in the Olympics, you've got both. Most collegiate rowing is sweep, but not all.
It was sweep.
Yep.
It's my ignorance, not theirs.
And there is an art. So what you're talking about is the catch, and there is an art to doing it so that you don't what they call miss water. So you're kind of rowing it in, but yet you obviously don't want to generate too much force in the opposite direction because that checks on the boat. So you spend hours and hours and hours trying to get to where you can do that in a boat that's moving and that's rocking back and forth, because it's sort of balanced like a skate blade on the water. It's not like it's a wide beamed thing that's super stable. So
yeah. So I read a story on your profile for CrossFit where you talk about how you went from rowing to CrossFit.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. You want me to tell that?
Yep.
Yeah. So so first of all, I'll back up just a little bit before that and say I actually first tripped across CrossFit early 2000s. My son had come home from school. He graduated from college and had come home and was talking about this thing where they posted workouts online. And it was the first I had heard of something called CrossFit. And so for a brief period, we tried doing kind of things in our backyard. We didn't have any equipment, but it was like, okay, that was sort of interesting. And then I went to my hometown a few years later. Again, this is for 2009, maybe something like that. And there was one of the early CrossFit gym. My hometown's name is Iowa. So there was a CrossFit gym there that was in somebody's barn. So I did a few workouts there and said, okay, that was nice, and went back to rowing. Then what you're referring to is I had retired and my wife had also retired. And one of the things we wanted to do was go out and see my son and my daughter-in-law and their family in Seattle. And we wanted to do an extended visit. So we went out there for a month, and I was determined that I was going to row with one of the local clubs, but getting the logistics to work out there, that was hard because they were putting together boats for certain regattas and all of that. And I knew that CrossFit gyms had rowing machines in them. So I looked up the nearest CrossFit gym to where my son lived. I called them and said, could I come in and could I use your rowers and I'll pay the drop-in fee and all that? And they said, sure. But they were just super, super welcoming. And I came in kind of mid-morning, maybe 8:30, something like that. And they had a class. It was 4 or 5 guys, pretty much the same guys every day. And they sort of welcomed me in and took me on. And I basically never looked back from there. I had a total blast. My wife on the way home said, you had more fun that month doing CrossFit than you had in the last couple of years of rowing. So I'd gotten kind of burned out on rowing. I gotten where I felt like I had done everything I could do. And so when I got back, I looked up CrossFit gyms in my area. I live in Wilmington, Delaware area. And I deliberately chose the one that was closest to where the rowing club was. And, in case I changed my mind or, trying to maybe keep both balls in the air. And that was CrossFit Riverfront. And I've been there ever since. It's sort of taken off from there. So.
And you never went to the rowing club?
For a few years I did. And then what was happening a few years I rode regularly, and then a few years I kind of rode just once or twice. And then for several years I kept my membership even though I wasn't going on the water. And finally I just realized it was, I had moved on. So
So when did you join Riverfront?
I joined Riverfront in almost exactly 8 years ago. So that trip that I was talking about was August of 2016. And I got back right around Labor Day. And then I started kind of the first couple of days of September of 2016 at CrossFit Riverfront.
And your CrossFit history competitively starts online at 2017. So you would have
Correct.
jumped into the next open.
Correct. I started off, they used to have two types of classes they ran all the time. They called one RibFit and then one CrossFit. And RibFit was sort of the slang we use is it's CrossFit without the crazy. You didn't do barbells, you didn't do rigs. It was boot camp, and it was for people like me who came in thinking they knew everything but didn't really actually know much of anything. It was perfect. So that got me started. Then I got over to the CrossFit side about as quickly as I could, and then this thing called the Open came along. And the first workout in 2017 was the one where you did dumbbell snatches and burpee box jump overs. And much to my surprise, I had no earthly idea how good, and I actually did pretty well on that workout. So then I immediately thought, oh, okay, I could be something. And then they had overhead squats, which I basically couldn't do at that point. And they had double unders, which it will always be a struggle area probably for me. So I went from euphoria, woo, I'm really good at this after one workout, to back down to earth for the rest of it. But I overall, I had an absolute blast. I had fun with the Friday night lights. I just thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I was sort of hooked on competing in CrossFit after the 2017 Open.
Before I follow up on that, Jay Birch says, funny how long it takes to cut those ties about your leaving the rowing club.
And Jeffrey is absolutely right. And to be fair to me, I had invested a lot. At one point, I was the president of the rowing club. We had competed at Masters, Nationals, and Worlds, and I had a lot of friends there. But in retrospect, I look back and it's like, yeah, okay. Even with all that, I could have cut ties about, I don't know, 4 years faster than I did. It was hard to let go.
So your first ever open workout goes really well.
Yep.
And isn't that, it's just like golf, right? You get one good shot at an open that brings you back year after year after year.
Correct. And actually I dabbled a little bit in golf for a while there. And I would say that's a perfect analogy. And especially if it's a golf shot where you took some risk, it's like, you kind of can't wait to do that again.
Right.
So yeah, I think that first workout probably is what hooked me. I think the CrossFit gods knew what they were doing and said, okay, now we can do whatever we want to. He's all excited.
So you pointed out that you did well in that, and you already pointed out your holes that you learned in the subsequent workouts. At what point did you think, man, I could be good at this and I need to set my sights at a higher goal?
I think at that point, what I said was, I want to do this again. I didn't know if I could be good or not at that point, but I want to do this again, and I want to plug those holes, and I want to see kind of where I could get. I think so. At that point, I believe I was competing as a 58-year-old, and I think it was as I was getting into the 60. About the time when I got into the 60 plus, then it was called class, is where I thought, okay, I've plugged some of these holes. I've done well in some workouts. I think I've plugged some of these holes. And now in my head, suddenly my competition was going to drop away. And which obviously it doesn't quite work that way. But then in 60 plus, I started making it to the age group qualifiers, as age group online qualifier, whatever they called it in that particular year. And that's where I really started thinking, I wonder if I could compete at that next level. So I don't think you would see it in my profile necessarily, but the first sort of real out of gym competition that I did was Granite Games in 2019. that was my leap of faith, where I remember I drove out to that, which is in Minnesota, and my family's in Iowa. So I wanted to drive out there so I could kind of visit my family too. I remember it was such a hard thing for me to kind of say out loud that I think I can compete with these guys. And I was nervous getting into the car and nervous driving out there and all that. But I would say 2019 is probably the answer to your question. When I went to the Granite Games, I thought, all right, I think I'm ready to see if I can go to the next level.
Yeah. So, man, so many things. So you said earlier that you and your wife went out to Seattle because you had just retired.
Yep.
If I look at your like background, it's in math, computer science, and engineering.
Correct.
Is that what you did for your career?
So yeah, so my degrees are in mechanical engineering and then computer science and with a math minor. What I did for most of my career focused on the computer end of that. I was in IT for several companies, the last one of which was a major pharmaceutical company.
So it's no coincidence that your CrossFit love and career started after you retired. Did that give you more time to dabble with filling the gaps, or did you still try to have some kind of balance?
So absolutely, it gave me more time to work on those gaps. At first, I thought I was going to want to get back into consulting and all of that, but fairly quickly I realized I was done. I had given kind of all I had to give to the corporate world. And I found such a supportive group at CrossFit Riverfront, and I would go in to take a class, and then I would stay afterwards and work on, double unders or on trying to get bar muscle ups for the first time or whatever. And there was kind of a group of them that were so helpful and supportive and were either where I was or a little bit ahead of me, that sort of pushed me through. And it really became, it was sort of a shift that I made from, I need to find some other place to work. And I kind of made the shift over to, I really love doing this and I've never been happier. So that's it sort of turned into it gradually turned into where I kind of go in sort of mid to late morning, and then I'm pretty much there for the morning and then go home for lunch. So 3 to 4 hours, something like that.
Did you start coaching too?
Yes, I did. So I started coaching. I want to say I got my level 1 in 2018, and then level 2. And then last year I got my level 3 in last November. So, which I'm really proud of that one. I think one of the things I didn't think about anyway was, it'd been a long time since I wasn't the best student in college anyway. There were people who were a lot more disciplined and better about studying than I was, but it had been 40 years since I'd done that. So to try to take on a body of knowledge large enough, to be able to handle a level 3 test, my study skills were rusty. So I was proud of having made it through that and having sat through a 4-hour test. That was a lot for my increasingly lame attention span. So yeah, so I've been coaching about, I want to say 6 years now.
I'm just blown away that you have your level 3, and because it is hard. It's like, I've talked to a lot of people that did not pass the first time through. And you saying like you haven't really taken a test in 40 years, like, people don't understand. Like, I'm 54. It's been a long time since I sat down for a test, right? And do you know if there's anybody older than you that's passed the level 3?
That's a great question. I've actually wondered that. I posted, there's a 60+ forum where I posted that I had gotten my level 3 and kind of offered my support to anybody who wanted to go after it, because I don't know if there are others kind of my age or older. And kind of my message was, hey, if I can do it, there's a lot of people out there who are, smarter or have better backgrounds or whatever. But I would be happy to help them. But I honestly, I don't know. So I'm 66 now. If there are any level 3s out there who are at or about or above that age, I'd love to hear from you.
That'd be a really cool title to hold, like the oldest L3.
The oldest level 3.
Yeah. Corey Leonard says, Scott, I can't thank you enough for these interviews. Most of these folks seem to have taken the same path that I'm currently on, and that is ridiculously encouraging.
Well, that's great to hear, and I would say the same thing, Scott. I'm watching a lot of these guys, and I see some guys who are just putting in, tremendous amounts of work or doing amazing things despite challenges, or what, and it's like, it's sort of inspiring. It's easy to get, like, at this point in the training cycle, some of my joints are kind of hurting, and I'm really looking forward to the games, but then also really looking forward to kind of resting afterwards. And it's easy to kind of and I'm watching some of these interviews that you do, and I'm going, dang, they're kind of firing me up. So.
Yeah. Jay Birch says, as we get older, those study skills become less and less. And
He's
this
right.
man who just retired from teaching.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, my skills had gotten pretty rusty. So, but again, I hope there's a message. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see that message. I think there's a message there, though, that says, but you can don't say, oh, I'm 50 years old, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. If you want to, you can do it. There are people who are willing to help. I mean, you partner with Kat on a lot of these things, and Kat, gave me some of her level 3 study stuff. There are people out there who will help you get there. You can do it if you want it.
Speaking of which, she says, hi, Mark.
Hi, Kat.
So my next question to you is, you talked about working on muscle ups, and do you still have a muscle up in the bag? Like
I do.
ups?
So last year at the games, we had to do, our final workout was 10 bar muscle ups, and then 45 dumbbell snatches with 50 pounds. I did the first 7 unbroken, and then came down and then did the last 3. So I can still do those. Ring muscle ups, I'm not quite as proficient. I can still do them, but ring muscle ups are basically a 1 at a time for me.
So my next question is, do you think event organizers give your age group enough credit for what you can accomplish?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I'm going to preface a little bit by saying I think it's a hard needle to thread. You don't want to give. So at the Granite Games in 2019, we had a handstand walk event, and by the way, they had made it, though, 10-foot minimum intervals you had to do. Well, nobody could do it. So in the 60+ division, you had 10 guys standing around looking at each other, and that's not a good look. And now you haven't differentiated anybody either. But since 2019, I saw in one of your interviews where you talked with Tony Tursky, and I know that Tony and some of those other guys who are really good at handstand walks have sort of been pushing, and I think gradually winning the battle to, we've now gotten to the point where 60 to 64 certainly, and I would submit 65 plus. Most of the guys, not all of them, but most of them have that, and I just think it's a hard target to hit, because as fast as I think CrossFit athletes are improving, say from 18 to 34, I think it's improving even faster in the older age groups. And I think knowing, do we put handstand walks in there or do we not? Do we have them do bar muscle ups or do chest to bars? That's kind of a tough thing. Last year, they had men's 65 plus doing bar muscle ups. They had women's 65 plus at the games doing chest to bars. And not for me to say, talk to the ladies in that group, but I kind of feel like that was right. Like, I think the majority of that field in 65 plus, I believe, maybe didn't have them. So you want to show it off as soon as you have a field that can do it, but equally you don't want to make it look, bad. So
yeah.
I will also say, when we started off, I think I'd actually go back to that 2017 Open. If memory serves correctly, there was a workout that involved handstand push-ups. And for 55 and over, though, they didn't have us do handstand push-ups. They had us do barbell presses, shoulder presses. And I remember howling about it because I could do handstand. Well, now they've got us doing handstand push-ups. That seems to be all the time. So I think they They don't always get it perfectly right, but I think they're doing a good job of trying to evolve to where we are.
The reason it comes up is Tony's actually the person who brings it to light to me a lot.
Yeah.
When I was at Legends last fall, they were supposed to do chest to bar, and he petitioned that they get to do bar muscle ups and at least give them the opportunity to show off if they could. And so they changed the workout. So as it went along, that bar movement became increasingly difficult. So at least if you didn't have the bar muscle up, you could get through the first couple rounds. But then when it got to the like third round or fourth round, you could do bar muscle ups, and those who had it could show their stuff and differentiate themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's a great approach because it allows both. It allows you to have an active competing field. It allows people to do the movements that they can do, but then the highly skilled guys like Tony, it does give them a chance to show that off. The other thing I've seen, and I think it was Legends out. Did you go to Legends in San Diego?
I did not.
Okay. They had a thing where there's handstand walks, but if you couldn't do handstand walks, you could opt to do, I think it was overhead dumbbell carries. And then you had to, every so many feet, you had to stop and then do presses with them. And they defined it so that they tried to make it so that the handstand walk people would finish above the people who were doing the overhead work with the dumbbells. But it allowed everybody to have a movement that they could do, and yet allowed differentiation for those guys who had developed the skill. So,
sorry. Corey said, we will never move the needle if you don't give us the opportunity to work to move the needle.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty well said. I'm trying to think now if there are many movements that they shouldn't have 65 plus do. I think we should be tested, and talking at games level, we should be tested on both kinds of bar muscle ups. We should be able to do, the handstand push-ups and all that. I would personally be in favor of us doing sometimes for the even higher difficulty, they do the where you're facing the wall facing handstand push-ups. There's a lot of guys in our group who can do those. I think you may adjust them, like that workout I was talking about last year. We did 10 bar muscle ups. The younger masters age groups did a higher number of them, but toward, his point, it gave us a chance to show what we could do. So no, I think he's right about that.
Yeah. I think it's hard and like you said, and then we'll move on, but you don't have as many data points, right? You guys don't have the opportunities to compete live at an elite level as much as the elite athletes do.
Correct.
So you have less data points to show what's possible.
Yep. I think that's right.
Hopefully that changes in the near future, but
yeah, well, and again, I think it is. Since the 2017 Open, I don't think we're going back to doing shoulder presses instead of handstand push-ups. And so hopefully it's gradually catching up. It never seems to be fast enough, but hopefully they're getting there.
So you're heading to Birmingham.
Yep.
What are your realistic expectations for this year's games?
I think the first thing is, I think it's kind of maybe a slightly different answer than maybe you were looking for, but I think it's going to be that much easier for me to relax and just enjoy the experience. I think for a first timer last year, I think I did a pretty good job of doing that, but there was a whole lot of great imposter syndrome. I can't believe I'm one of the top 10 in the world and really being nervous about proving it. And I think I'm able to relax a little bit more this year and just sort of enjoy it and sort of see what are the differences between the way they're hosting it and here at Birmingham and what they did in Madison. As far as a performance expectation, like everybody I think has a boo-boo. I doubt there's anybody, if you were to interview all 20 guys in my age group, I bet exactly 0 of them would not give you my shoulder hurts, my ankle hurts, my knee hurts, my whatever. And I'm one of them. So there's a little bit of an element of depends on how my boo-boos hold up. But I'm going to aim, in my head, I'm kind of saying I qualified 17th. I'd like to kind of get back into that top 10 and see, kind of where it goes from there. I've got some holes that if they do, like everybody, we all do. if the workouts hit my holes hard enough, that's going to be hard for me to do. But equally, I think I've got some strong areas where if they hit those, I could do all right. So
Yeah, we made the joke the other night on our Sunday night show that because right now Rosti was not able to come in yet. They're trying to get somebody else to do body work and help you guys out, but they need to get a sponsor of like Tractor Supply. So you have duct tape and binding twine and stuff like that to keep the bodies together through the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's right. But
hopefully they get you somebody.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
I think that's doable. I mean, Rossi had a massive presence last year in Madison. So, but I'm sure there are other people who can provide some of that.
Yeah. I've said it a bunch of times on here collectively, and I don't know if Holly's finished all of her research, but she got from 35 to 54 combined Instagram followers is over 3 million.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And so that's pretty impressive. And that's not even including 55 up.
Right.
At that point, like she was still working through that process. Sponsors are missing out if they're not taking advantage of this.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I think too. And coming from, so I mentioned my rowing background a little bit. US rowing used to talk much more kind of openly about that. So the stars are the guys in the Olympic boats who are 24 years old and are sleeping on the floor of the boathouse, eating ramen noodles or whatever. They don't have any money. They're the stars, but they don't have any money. The masters rowers are the one, and frankly, the parents of the youth rowers are the ones who do have money and are willing to spend it on the sport. So US rowing, that's actually sort of a thing they try to be cognizant of is, in a way, I guess we're sort of cash cows. I think for CrossFit, what do we bring? Well, we're at a stage of life where we probably got a little bit more money, but I think you're hitting on an even bigger point. We bring a community with us. So we're not training in some camp someplace where, there's 4 of us who are games athletes and we're training and we go in and each one of us, when I went last year, I had, first of all, 10 or 12 people who actually physically came to Madison. Second, you had our affiliate is over 200 in size. And then sometimes I'm at CAT's affiliate as well. And there's some people there. And a lot of those people were following me online or doing the best they could, given some of the setup that they had. And like my wife's niece was saying that like her kids had found out that, Uncle Mark was doing, so they were kind of, they were sort of excited about Uncle Mark being, so I feel like we bring money, we bring a community, and we bring eyeballs with us. And I think that's the value that we can bring to sponsors. And I think continuing to sort of develop how we do that is really important.
And the most important thing that you guys bring that you've left off the list is you are what CrossFit was built on. It was to make sure that we could get off the couch when we were 65. You guys aren't just getting off the couch. You're doing bar muscle ups and handstand push-ups. Like you're flipping what the concept of age is on its head because of the methodology of CrossFit.
Yeah, no, I think that's well put. I see in Birmingham, you're going to have the 70 plus group. I think they're splitting a hair and saying that they're not technically games athletes. It's a community event at the same time. But watch some of those 70 plus guys. I looked at, so first of all, I believe it's Tom Ackerman, has qualified in the 65 plus. He's 70 years old, but he's qualified with the rest of us, actually qualified ahead of me. There's some amazing guys now going into their 70s they're still doing bar muscle ups and all that. And I feel like that's gradually getting pushed forward. And you're right. That's the whole point of this is the CrossFit methodology allows you to stave off, not only stave off decrepitude, but to really thrive and continue to do, great stuff as you get older.
And you guys paint that picture beautifully. And that should be used more than what we see at the elite CrossFit Games.
Well, I would agree. I hope, thank you for saying that. And I hope we do. There are certainly an awful lot of guys that I look at among my competitors where I go, wow, they kind of inspire and fire me up. So
with that, I've said this on all the shows. We're going to be there next week. We're doing a behind the scenes. Ellie Hiller and myself will be back in the warm-up areas, the corrals, the cool-down tubs, wherever they may be, chatting with you guys to see how your weekend's going, whatever you want to share with us as to what's happening with the community, with yourselves, and put that out as it's going to be like a weekly documentary for a few weeks after the games. And can't wait to meet you in person, Mark.
Well, first of all, thank you. I love hearing that. And if there's whatever we can do to try to help support that effort and, make ourselves available. We're old people. We love to talk about ourselves. So that's great. So look forward to meeting you and your team as well.
And I want to finish with this one question. If they release a workout with a long row in it, how excited do you get?
On a scale of 1 to 10, probably a 12. That would be awesome for me.
Yeah.
I don't row as well as I used to, but I think I still row okay.
Yeah. Well, with that, good luck that is what happens as they start releasing workouts this week-ish. We've heard.
That's kind of what I've heard too, but I haven't seen anything formal.
Yeah. And I can't wait to meet you in person there in Birmingham and get to know you a little bit more. Thank you to everybody in the chat for being here. You've made it a great show. With that, we will see everybody next time on the Clydesdale Media Podcast. Bye, guys.